The whole thing's nuts.
Yeah.
And then, you know, have Bongino and Cash Patel saying he definitely killed himself. Like, what? This one's a line in the sand.
Yeah.
And when you have this one hardcore line in the sand that everybody had been talking about forever, and then they're trying to gaslight you on that.
So recently, Joe Rogan railed against the Trump administration for what is the Epstein story cover-up. That's exactly what this is at this point, and what he thinks the ramifications are for that, both on the Trump administration and distrust among the American public. This is in the context of a discussion with Mike Baker, a former CIA agent. So let's get his take on this. Let's see where we agree or disagree. Please like the video and subscribe to the channel.
If you thought about this island, if you're bringing award-winning scientists, like famous people, politicians, world leaders, all to one place, you're basically throwing as much shit against the wall as you can.
Yeah.
And then you have all this stuff on all these different people, and they know it. And so then you just kind of like, wasn't there like some CEO that had to step down because he wound up giving Epstein, it was found out that he gave Epstein like $150 million that they couldn't explain why?
Well, okay.
Wasn't that the case?
Well, he might be referring to Les Wexner, who gave him about that much in property, it seems like, but also Leon Black, the head of Apollo Global and the curator of one of the biggest museums in the world, ostensibly gave him $158 million just to do his taxes, by the way, and that's who I think he's referring to. He did step down, and by the way, he was alleged to have committed some of the similar sex crimes that Epstein did, and Jean-Luc Brunel did too, and Jean-Luc Brunel also ended up murdered, or, you know, he killed himself, right?
Jamie? So it's one of those things where there's obviously value in having all these people on your side.
Yeah.
But when you do get all this information on these people, like, what are they trying to accomplish with it? This is the question. Are they trying to get support for Apollo CEO to step down after firm finds more payments to Jeffrey Epstein? $158 million. He paid the convicted sex offender $158 million.
What does it? If you can you scroll down a little bit, Jamie?
Yeah. He's planning to step down as chief. I've advised the Apollo board that I will retire as CEO before my 70th birthday in July. Remain as chairman. Oh, he's going to remain as a chairman. New York Times detailed at least $75 million in payments and found that Mr. Black had paid Epstein $158 million in a 5-year period ending in 2017. He also lent Mr. Epstein more than $30 million, only $10 million of which he was paid back. Wow. So that's a guy that they got something on him.
I love this.
Yeah, exactly. You know, obviously blackmail's the likely explanation for why he sent him so much money. His explanation has always been, when prompted about this, and I think he's been asked about it a few times, is that, you know, Epstein just swindled me out of my money. You know, I trusted this guy. He turned out to be a charlatan. I'm sorry, it just doesn't explain that, even from someone of the economic background of Leon Black, you know, one of the most prominent people in the world. It doesn't make sense for him to pay him that much just for Epstein to do his taxes over a few-year period. I think it was, what does it say? I think here it says it was like 2013 to 2017. Just another one of the angles and mysteries that exists in this case that raises questions that have not been answered by the Trump administration, the administration that was supposed to be so forthcoming about the Epstein story. Same goes with Les Wexner. They've never even tried to interview him. No DOJ or FBI official has ever tried to interview that guy to try to understand why he gave Epstein so much property, including a $77 million mansion in Manhattan, the biggest private residency in Manhattan. No answers, just questions that still remain.
Leon viewed Epstein as a confirmed bachelor with eclectic tastes. This was after his 2008 guilty plea.
Yeah.
Wow.
Christ.
Mr. Epstein's advice was worth perhaps $2 billion in tax savings to Mr. Black, according to the report.
Right.
What the
But this is this.
It's hard to even believe that much in tax savings is possible, though Epstein was proficient in money movement and money laundering ever since his days in Bear Stearns, and that's probably what got him to take a private venture on a private jet with Douglas Lease, who was involved in intelligence operations at the age of something like 29, he flew to the Pentagon and was presumably involved in some of the money movement aspects of Iran-Contra. Now, the paper trail for this isn't very concrete, but we know he worked with Adnan Khashoggi, who almost certainly was involved in that as well. But that explains maybe, some of the background about why they're saying this happened. But it's hard for me to believe that $2 billion in tax savings was even remotely imaginable, given the amount of money he was supposedly handling. And this is just to do his taxes. The guy's rich, but just do his taxes. You'd think that, trained and proficient and licensed CPAs could have done a good job at that. And Epstein didn't have expertise in that either. He just got just insane amounts of wealth for no real reason.
This is what Weinstein said. Eric said that this guy is he's not good. He doesn't know what he's talking about. He wasn't a good financial advisor.
Yeah, I mean, I think part of it is you can say, okay, why was he collecting people around him? Why was he doing? I mean, was he keeping a file? Right? You still have to figure out what that file looks like. Part of it could have been initially self-preservation. Right. I mean, he's engaged in all sorts of activity. He gets a few people into it, then suddenly, he doesn't look so bad. Right. And he's kind of protecting himself because now I'm surrounded by people who also have to keep that secret. Right. So, but then the question becomes, is at what point is he or somebody in his little tight circle there? Are they approached, right, by anybody who's interested in some of these folks? But we don't know because we don't know who the fuck's in these files. Right. So,
or if the files even exist.
If the files even exist, and apparently.
Yeah, they certainly exist. I mean, we've been given so many tales about this, but we know they exist. We know there's information that hasn't been disclosed in this investigation, no matter how Trump's tried to sideswipe it. He originally said, Epstein didn't commit suicide, no evidence on blackmail, and no evidence of clients, after saying that, Pam Bondi confirming the client list is on my desk, under review at the direction of Trump, and we have thousands of hours of children being molested by Epstein. That turned into, conveniently for them, child porn, and no one wanted to see that. No one ever wanted to see these vile films in the first place. We just want people held accountable. And one thing that Joe said, I'm going to push back a little bit about, it wasn't that Epstein didn't know what he was doing. In terms of money laundering and money movement, I do think he knew what he was doing, and that very rarely comes up in most mainstream discussions of Epstein. But if you read Whitney Webb's book on Epstein, One Nation Under Blackmail, she gets into this. The history is clear. He was very much involved in money movement schemes, including a Ponzi scheme that was one of the biggest in U.S. history. When Towers Financial went down, he actually served Epstein as a federal informant in that case. So it wasn't that he was a charlatan on everything, though he certainly was. I don't think he was a tax specialist or a financial advisor at all. In fact, there's no evidence that he invested money of Wexner's at all, despite that being, ostensibly his purpose behind the Wexner empire. But, he wasn't a charlatan in terms of moving money. I think he was very proficient at that. And that's why I think intelligence agencies wanted to work with him.
There's nothing in there, according to Pam Bondi.
And Cash Patel. The whole thing's nuts.
Yeah.
And then, have Bongino and Cash Patel saying he definitely killed himself. Like, what?
Yeah.
What? Okay, this just the level of convenience. It's so convenient that the guards were asleep. So convenient that the cameras didn't work. So convenient that years later you have a recording of the outside of the cell, but a minute is missing from it.
3 minutes.
Yeah.
Almost
3 minutes?
Yeah, they found out it was like almost 3 minutes was missing. 2 minutes, like 53
It's
seconds.
like the missing Watergate tape.
Oh, I thought
Remember?
it was just 1 minute.
It started off as a minute, and then
Yeah.
people kept looking in the metadata, and like, okay, it was saved this many times, and it
Oh
was
my
actually up to 3
God.
minutes missing.
God.
And it wasn't just the missing time. This was filmed in a place that wasn't even next to Epstein's cell. It was a corridor. And it's not clear that they got the time and footage of when he supposedly killed himself. This would never have made anyone believe this official narrative, this footage that was released, even though Dan Bongino and Cash Patel in various interviews hinted that, hey, this will, allay all trepidations or apprehensions that the official narrative is wrong. And you saw Dan Bongino and Cash Patel in that prominent interview. They looked like they were under duress, like they had their families in a hostage situation or something, saying, we reviewed the film. There's no way he was murdered. He committed suicide. It's so absurd.
Okay.
That's plenty of time to kill somebody. 3 minutes is more than enough time. You
Oh,
go-
3 minutes, you could get a whole bunch of people killed by then.
You saw that guy that was his cellmate too, right?
Yeah.
Guy
Sorry.
is a fucking gigantic human being.
Yeah.
A huge guy who was a mass murderer, who had killed multiple people, a bad cop, who was built like a brick fucking shithouse.
Yeah.
The kind of guy that you could really easily get to strangle somebody.
Yeah.
It would take him, I could kill him in 30 seconds.
Yeah. No.
How is this fucking giant
Okay, his cellmate actually was moved out of his cell for no apparent reason. There hasn't been like a good defined documented reason for which they did that. They moved that guy out of his cell apparently about a day before his supposed suicide. So yeah, he would have been capable of killing Epstein, but apparently they moved him out of the cell. And by the way, any evidence pointing toward, foul play here was completely disregarded by William Barr, who was the son of Donald Barr, the guy that hired Epstein for his first job to teach at the Dalton School. And now you have William Barr, who grew up through the ranks of the CIA and was the attorney general at various points. He's overseeing Epstein's stay at this prison and just does everything he can to shove anything that would contradict the official narrative regarding Epstein's death under the rug.
dude could do it easy?
Metadata.
Metadata from raw Epstein. No thanks.
Yep.
Metadata from raw Epstein prison video shows approximately 2 minutes and 53 seconds were removed from one of the two stitched together clips. The cut starts off at the missing minute. Wow.
Weird.
Yeah, shocker.
Yeah. So a guy like that decides, he's going to off himself. And again,
But here's the thing,
know.
it's like these guys that are all involved in this are still, they've been around for a long time, and they have this mentality that existed before the internet, where you could just kind of put stuff
True.
out there.
Yeah.
And you wouldn't have all these psycho sleuths out there that are going to go over everything with a fine-tooth comb, especially guys who are tech wizards who can look at the metadata and he can figure this kind of stuff out.
Well, shit died a lot quicker. You're right. So something would happen, and look, we still have ADHD, right? Collectively as a nation, right? I mean, things move on, and I think maybe that's what they're, some people are saying. Look, they've called the recess on Capitol Hill because they figure by the time they come back in September, everybody will have moved on from this, right?
Yeah, I do think that's why Mike Johnson so desperately wanted that recess, by the way. No question about it. And no question that this is a cover-up. It's a bipartisan cover-up. The only difference is the Trump administration and Trump's surrogates promised answers, and Trump isn't delivering. The Biden administration never promised answers in this, for sure. But, the videotape is what it is. It's not going to change anyone's minds, especially anyone that was skeptical about this, to be sure.
Yeah.
I think they're wrong. I don't think this again. This feels like and just looks like that one of those handful of conspiracies. Again, you go to JFK or whomever, that's just going to hang around.
This is
right?
a line in the sand.
Yeah.
This one's
Yeah.
a line in the sand.
Yeah.
Because this is one where there's a lot of stuff about, when we thought Trump was going to come in and a lot of things were going to be resolved.
Yeah.
We're going to drain the swamp. We're going to figure everything out. And when you have this one hardcore line in the sand that everybody had been talking about forever, and then they're trying to gaslight you on that.
Well, you would have thought
Is
that
that your
Dan.
phone?
Yeah, I hope not.
Yeah, I have to agree. I think this one is going to hang around. If I'm, walking into the future, I would look back on this and say, hey, this is one of those situations that's going to be a JFK-like story. There's always going to be questions because of the way that they've responded to this. Not just concealing information from the public, but acting like it would burn the world to the ground if we let out any information that was real and tangible about this case, about Epstein's relations with intelligence agencies, potential clients that he had in this sex trafficking operation, which, again, they're trying to sweep under the rug, that, oh, by the way, involves some of the most prominent people in power in the world, and it was globally. It was Prince Andrew and, Bill Gates and Bill Clinton and Trump were all, associated at various times with Epstein. That doesn't necessarily mean those guys were involved in any of the crimes, but maybe they could be, maybe they were, and the information that is being withheld so defensively by Trump, and there's been so much spin from it being boring to it being a Democratic hoax to it hurting the victims and making it painful for the victims. That's what Mike Johnson said. No, it would be painful for the perpetrators. It would be painful for these vile villains that engaged in this nefarious trade and probably under a intelligence operation to bend these people to their will. That's what it likely was, and I don't think we're going to get those answers, but I do think it's going to hang around.
Oh, it's my wife. Should I answer?
Silent, buddy.
Yeah, it's on. You know, it was on silent, but it still goes. How does that happen? It literally is
government?
on silent. And
Are you sure?
yeah, no, I'm positive because it's got a little thing up top that says silent, and
Your
and it
phone's
still
compromised.
goes. My phone is
CIA
compromised.
doesn't trust you. You're friends
Yeah.
with me.
Well,
They don't trust you anymore.
They did call me this morning. What are you going to talk about? I said, I don't know.
Do they ever talk to you about that? Do
course
they ever
they
have
did.
questions
Of course they called him and asked him what he was going to talk about. This is the CIA. Come on.
about your appearances here?
No. In fact, and I'm in the building on occasion, and we're actually working on a show that's going to be a great TV show based on this amazing museum that's inside agency headquarters. But nobody ever says that. They don't. We have a really nice relationship. They don't tell me what to say. If I go on TV to talk about something, they just like, it's not like they're going to call up and say, well, here's our view on this.
They try.
Well, if you were in the agency, they would, and that's exactly what they're doing to Cash Patel and Dan Bongino and Pam Bondi right now. They're telling them exactly what to say, and probably more importantly, what not to say. So yeah, it's a little bit different probably being outside of the CIA, even if you believe this guy. But if you're inside the CIA, you maintain the company line. That Epstein killed himself, that there's no clients, that there's no blackmail, that there's no associations with any intelligence agencies, despite the fact that sleuths, like Rogan hinted to before, have uncovered all of those associations with a cursory examination of only what exists to the public in this case. Imagine what we don't see.
Trust
Right?
you.
Yeah, they trust me. I'm not going to open my yap and talk sources and methods, and at the same time, I'm just going to try to just talk from an operational perspective. But yeah, so that was my wife, which reminds me, it's my boy Muggsy's birthday today.
Happy birthday, Muggsy.
Yeah, thank you very much.
Look, with a thing like this, what is the general feeling about people that you talk to that are still in the agency or people that are still involved in the government? Like, how are they feeling about this? Because, like, the general public is outraged, right?
Yeah.
Do the people inside, are they frustrated? Like, people that wanted this stuff to be exposed?
Yeah, it's funny because with the agency, it's not like the Bureau. The agency, I think most people honestly don't really probably give a shit about the Epstein files. They're more concerned now about this release from Tulsi Gabbard and the talk about manipulating intelligence for the 2016 election,
Right.
and Russian collusion and all of that. That speaks more to the agency than the Epstein files does, just from a whose responsibility is whose, right? The Epstein thing is a DOJ FBI issue. I think if they're concerned about it, it's because of how it erodes trust in organizations, institutions. Right?
Of course, and Russiagate would erode trust in institutions, including the CIA, which pushed Russiagate to the brim. The CIA director was deeply involved in this, as we know, and I don't think the Trump administration is going to charge them. So yeah, I'd be concerned about that and how that looks, the public appearance toward the CIA after being involved in it. I don't think anyone's going down, but the distrust is palpable. That's something that would happen regardless of anyone not going down or going down for it.
Right, and that's happened a lot. So, there's a lot of good people. I know. Again, every time I talk about the agency, people are like, "Fuck you, you're such a shill." But there's a lot of good people doing very difficult work for the agency.
I believe
right?
that. I believe that.
And so, I think if anything, they take it personally when people think, "Fuck the CIA, you gotta burn it down and start over again."
Well, I don't care what they think about that, because that's what we think on this show, is abolish the CIA. Don't replace it with anything. Don't replace it with any psychological operation organization that draws Americans into war and propagandizes Americans to support wars.
Like they said with the FBI as well.
I've talked about that many times. Like, you don't know what the fuck is going on in the world. The world is filled with chaos. Like, you need people that are paying attention to that shit, and they should be on your side.
Yeah.
They should be on the side of the American people, paying attention to threats. If you think that not paying attention at all is going to do you any good when there's all these countries out there that are fucking plotting constantly, you're crazy.
Yeah. No.
You're living in a utopia. You're living in a fake world. The real world is filled with madness. And you got to have people paying attention to it.
Yeah.
Yeah, the real world is filled with madness, and guess who's the utopians? The people who think that the CIA is the good guys subduing that or rooting that out or abolishing that. No, the CIA is the chaos. If this was Walter White on Breaking Bad, remember he said, I am the one who knocks. The CIA should say, I am the chaos. I am the one who knocks. Because that's what the CIA's done since its inception. It's fomented regime change operations that are always costly, always destructive, always bloody, and always consumed with debt and destruction. That's what happened in Guatemala, in Chile, in Iran, in the absurd facade that was Operation Northwoods and the Bay of Pigs fiasco. It's what happened in 2014 in Ukraine when the CIA and the State Department were involved in a coup of the elected representative government of Ukraine. When they overthrew the Yanukovych government, then we ended up with a bellicose toward Russia government. And guess what seeds that laid the foundation for? It's the proxy war in Ukraine, which has caused hundreds of thousands of lives, maybe millions of lives, many projections are. $200 billion. We got those examples in Libya and Syria. Regime change there has led to the elevation of a former emir of Al-Qaeda that fought against U.S. troops in Iraq there. In Libya, there's slave trading now because of that regime change operation, which, again, the CIA was in on. In Afghanistan, hundreds of thousands of lives, hundreds of billions of dollars to replace the Taliban with the Taliban over 20 years. That's what the CIA is. The CIA is the chaos. And if you're calling people utopian, it's utopian for believing that the CIA is just out there to protect us. Because I've only really talked about regime change and only scraped the surface on that, but they've also tried to propagandize Americans. We know this from MK Ultra mind control experiments that were perpetrated on Americans by the CIA. We know this from Operation Mockingbird, where they planted stories in the media to try to control the news media and bend it to its own will. We know that Arthur Dulles wrote to JFK shortly before his death that, hey, the CIA is a rogue organization that isn't representing the will of the American people in the electoral process. It's kind of become its own government within the government, and it should essentially be abolished. We know all this is true. So this is where I really disagree with Joe. I can't disagree with anything really that he said prior to that, but it is a truly utopian view to believe that the CIA isn't the root of the chaos. The CIA is, the most pernicious terrorist organization in the United States and maybe in the world. And, we've seen that play out over and over and over again throughout my lifetime. But I do want to hear what you guys have to say. Let me know down below. Do you agree with Joe Rogan? Is the Epstein story a line in the sand? Will this continue to haunt Trump and hurt Trump? Will it stick around as long as JFK? And is Joe right about the CIA? Let me know down below. Like the video, subscribe to the channel, subscribe to Joe Rogan too. Excellent podcast. I really enjoy his coverage and his interviews. And please consider becoming a YouTube member. If you click the join button below, you can become a member and that will support the channel, which I'll really appreciate. And as thanks, I'll give you access to all my videos before they go live to the general public on YouTube. And until I see you guys next time, no more war, no more debt, no more inflation, and no more empire. Peace out, guys. Catch you in the next one.